All right. Y'all hear me? All right, let's get going. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming here in person in Antioch for the Lower Sugarloaf and Labor Mountain Fire Community Update. And for those of you in virtual land, welcome as well. Before we get going, just wanted to go through a couple things, how this meeting will be formatted and kind of the general flow of our agenda. So, by the way, my name's Stan Hinatsu. I'm the Public Information Officer here for Pacific Northwest Team 3. Can't hear? Do I need to hold it up closer? All right, thank you. Sorry. Am I good? You got me? Right. Okay, so tonight we'll have a series of formal presentations. We'll kick it off with kind of a welcoming from our forest supervisor. Our incident commander will come up and kind of let us know why we're here, what our role is on these two fires. Then we'll follow up with the sheriff on evacuation updates. And I'm pretty sure, I'm not sure I've met Whitney from the PUD. He'll have some, oh, there you go. Hi, Whitney. Nice to meet you. He'll be here to talk a little bit about electrical stuff, issues regarding that, and then the mayor, your mayor Antioch, will close this out. So tonight, again, a series of presentations. Then we will open it up for questions and answers, both here in person as well as online. And for those of you who are watching us via Facebook, just put those questions in the comment sections, and we'll sort through those, and our PIOs over here will get me the information, and we'll direct the question to the right person. All right, before we get going, I did want to do a few introductions, and I need to look at my notes here. First, want to introduce Tara Humphrey. She's a forest supervisor for the Okanagan-Wenatchee National Forest. And I think I saw Holly here, Holly Craigs, the Antioch Chelan District Ranger, right? Back when I worked here, it was just the Antioch and the Chelan District, so that's a change. Erica's not here from the Lake Wenatchee. Scott McFarland, I think I saw him. He's with the Department of Natural Resources. I'm not sure I saw Brandon here representing District 8, or Andy Lee, is he here? With District 9. All right, that's all right. Mike Morrison, Sheriff Mike Morrison with Chelan County Sheriff's Office. Ryan Moody with the Chelan County Sheriff's Office. Whitney with the PUD. And Renee Swearinger, the mayor. Hopefully, that's right. She said she might be a little late. Kevin Larkin, one of our agency administrators. Aaron Uoff, one of our other agency administrators. And then we've got two air resource advisors here as well. They're just sitting right over here, Seth Morphus and Nicole Bingoff, and they'll be hanging around if you have any questions about smoke. So after the meeting's over. So without further ado, Tara.
Thank you, Stan. Welcome all. I appreciate you coming together. I think we should stop meeting like this after Palmas, but given the robust fire history on the Okanagan-Wenatchee, this could be how we meet often. So thank you for taking the time to engage with us and the management team. I wanted to just share a little bit about the start of this fire and a little bit about our fire season and what brought us to have the Complex Incident Management Team Pacific Northwest number 3 with us here tonight. Let's see, it was between 8:31 and 9:01 Sunday evening. A storm headed across the Cascades. It ignited multiple fires for us. 3 of our 6 districts experienced new fires and initial attack across the forest. All the fires this summer, as was Lower Sugarloaf and Labor Mountain Fire, were deemed full suppression. We haven't had any other response than full suppression, given the conditions that we find ourselves in around drought and fire danger. So that has been our stance about how we choose to respond to fires this year for our forest. We had several fires already on the landscape from storms that occurred between August 25th and 27th. We had a multitude of fires across our landscape, including a rather large fire on the Natchez Ranger District, the Wildcat Fire, in which we ordered a complex incident management team, PNW number 10, who was here with us on Palmas, and they're presently down there in the Natchez Ranger District. So we worked to prioritize and allocate the resources that we had available. Generally on this forest, we allocate resources in a east to west fashion, which happens to line up geographically, but also very well with our values, right? Knowing that our number one value is, of course, life, but second, property and communities. And so that is convenient. So we took the resources that we had, we aggressively attacked those fires the best we could. But lo and behold, we have a complex incident management team here with us. So I appreciate the team taking these fires, James Osborne and his team. I also really appreciate the support from Kevin Larkin on the Deschutes National Forest, helping me as I support all of the fires on our district, and Aaron Uloth supporting the fires as well. I also have huge admiration for the Okanagan-Wenatchee staff. We are very lucky to have professional and capable fire staff and other support staff that helps us be successful most cases. And when I say successful most cases, so this year we've had about 97 fires so far on the Okanagan-Wenatchee alone for about 28,000 acres, and we're still counting. If you haven't been looking at your apps or your lightnings are outside, there's lightning continuing to come through the Cascades for a little bit longer here as we move into fall. So I also, that being said, with 97 fires and only 28,000 acres burned thus far, I am extremely pleased and proud of our collective firefighting resources among all the agencies. They have done a tremendous job to get us in this place where we are in this season. They've done it professionally and safely, balancing not only their risk and safety, but the values at hand and the opportunities that we have to contain these fires. So thank you to all the firefighters and folks supporting the fire response. I also want to thank you for the support of our firefighters. I look at other fires in other places, and I feel so supported and privileged for the support that you give us all through your comments. So thank you. I know that they appreciate it, and I know that they're doing their very best out there for you and us in all of these communities. And as always on the Okanagan-Wenatchee, we are so privileged, and I'm so grateful for all the partners that we have supporting these fire responses, because we do it often, and I think we've gotten very good at it. So thank you to all our partners, whether it's other federal agencies, state agencies, county, or local. Just really, really appreciate that. And lastly, I just want you to know that I understand and empathize with your communities being impacted by adjacent fire footprints or smoke and others. We're continually thinking of you and hoping for a different outcome here in the near future. To that end, I will give it to the team to tell you about what they're doing to change that circumstance. Thanks again for your engagement.
Thanks, Tara. I forgot to introduce our team members, especially the incident commander, so I hope he doesn't fire me. James Osborne, incident commander, and Nathan Goodrich, our operations section chief. So, James?
Well, good evening, folks. And then I'll say good evening to the folks in the Wenatchee River Drainage, because I know some folks are there online, as well as folks down in Kittitas County. And where I'm going with that is we're managing a few different fires, and they stretch basically from Cle Elum to Entiat. And so if you know Washington, right, it's a big spot. And prior to that, I'll just say I'd like to do a round of applause, because the local agencies, both federal, state, Chelan County, we've been to this location multiple times. We were up on Pioneer out of Chelan last year, up in Stehekin. We were actually here twice last year on the forest, and your local responders and your local public safety folks, I'll say, are second to none. So I'd like to do a round of applause for them. So thanks for that. So complex incident management team. If you don't know what that is, that's a group of about 75 folks, up to roughly about 100, 115, and it kind of expands from there. Incident management is a tiered system, and it expands and contracts with the complexity of the incidents. This incident that we're dealing with, actually both incidents, the agency administrators, they do what is called a complexity analysis when we go to order incident management teams. And where these ranked out due to the values at risk and the people and properties and values on the landscape and what it impacts ranks at that top level. And so we were called in, we had our first meeting on the 2nd of September. We mobilized and came this way on the 3rd, and we were shadowing the local, the type 3 team, which is kind of your low complexity team. That's more in that extended attack phase. So there's initial attack, extended attack, and then we get into complex incident management. So it's a tiered approach, like I mentioned. Those folks were on scene. We came in, we shadowed them, and we went to work the next day. So with that, we, like I said, spread across that landscape from the Labor Mountain down there on the Kittitas, Chelan County line, just north of Cle Elum up the Teanaway River corridor. And we launched up the Wenatchee River drainage up towards Plain, and we've been focused on the Entiat the whole time as well, knowing where this fire is going to move. Like I said, we've been here before multiple times, and fire in the Cascades comes from the ridge top, the Cascade crest, down towards the valleys. And most of the folks on this team, Pacific Northwest Team 3, it's a local complex incident management team from Oregon and Washington, but we span folks from all over the country that come together to form that team. So with that, the team makeup has an operations section, the folks that are out fighting the fire. We have folks that do logistics, that feed and support the firefighters, folks that do the finance, folks that build this plan that's in my hand that shows who's where and what and how and all those sorts of things, all come together to formulate that, serve the firefighter, take care of them, and then serve the communities and work for the agency administrator. So again, we showed up on that to come together, and like I said, the fire behavior and knowing how it moves, we've been focused down near these values at risk and working to get enough resources to get into place. This fire has gone from number 1 at the top of the national SIT report, so the number 1 fire in the country, to number 5, to number 1, to number 10, to number 1, and as of this morning, we were number 1 again, and that's all based on a values at risk and a national system that prioritizes the incidents. That prioritization plays into potentially why you're not seeing helicopters flying or air tankers flying, because they're also on other fires. We do have aircraft assigned to us. There's some in Wenatchee, and they stretch as far as Easton on the I-90 corridor, because we're also sharing them with the Wildcat fire on the Natchez Ranger District. So aircraft just across the Northwest and across the country are spread super thin. We've also been under major smoke the last number of days. The last couple of days has been clear since the thunderstorms kind of pushed the smoke out, and so we've been flying aircraft where we can, and we've also been flying aircraft on initial attack that came from the last bit of lightning the last couple of days. And so we've been trying to take care of the small fires and not allow them to become big fires while we're taking care of the big one. So with that, I think some of the other comments and things we've seen I just want to put into the room first as well as we've been building what we call a forward operating base, so a fire camp. We have one down in Cle Elum area. We have one up in Plain. We're building one in Entiat. And then our ICP is actually in Leavenworth, and we've been bouncing between Leavenworth and Wenatchee doing meetings in terms of the administration side of life. But our folks are all spread between those 3 different fire camps, and we will be there until this fire's out. And so there's a focus on all the communities, all the homes, all the values at risk, and the Wenatchee River drainage up to Chumstick, over here on the Entiat side, up to Arnvor and beyond, and we've been working with the local sheriff's office on evacuations and recommendations to them this whole time. And so that will continue as we work to suppress this fire with everything we have. And as we bump up and down in that national prioritization based on what's occurring with the fire, we'll pull in whatever sort of resources we can to take care of it. So I want to give you all a little bit of stats. I know you're really interested in the operation of what's going on these incidents, and that's probably why you're here tonight, so I won't take any more time. But roughly there are 1,000 plus people on these two incidents. The bulk are on the lower Sugarloaf, so the bulk are on this side based on the values. Last couple of days, that fire pushed down towards, the Columbia quite rapidly, and so we shuffled resources within our own prioritization here, and then continue to ask for more resources from the Northwest as well as around the country. But just to give you the magnitude of folks that are here, so 1,000 plus people from 29 different states in the country, as far as the East Coast, as far as Pennsylvania, to the south, to Alaska, all across this great country, and 22 different agencies. So that's federal firefighters, state firefighters, local firefighters, county firefighters, structure firefighters, state MOB in Washington State. Once we get into structures, we coordinate with Washington State Patrol, who ends up mobilizing the state MOB process, and firefighters from county fire districts as well as the city fire districts come together and bring the structure engines and those type of things to help us in the structures. And so we have, I believe, 7 task forces, 6 that came on state MOB, and one of those task forces is a local county task force from the fire departments in the county to put that together that help us out and bolster our wildland side. So again, ton of people here to help, and to tag into that great response. We're here for the long haul, and if we can't catch it during all tenure, I know the local agencies between DNR and the Forest Service will order another one of us in as a team to come in and keep managing the incident, because that's what we're here for, to put the fire out and to work for you all. So appreciate your time. We'll be around for questions, and I'll pass it off. Thank you.
All right, thanks, James. Nathan Goodrich will be up here to talk about both fires, give an operational update.
Hi, good evening. I said good evening. Yeah, thank you. So before I start on the operations on both fires, I wanted to talk a little bit how we break these incidents down a little bit, and maybe talk about a couple of acronyms that we typically use, so you're not wondering when I'm talking. So when we start off on an incident, a small incident, say it's an acre, there's usually just one IC and firefighters. You don't really need to break it down a whole lot more than that. If it starts getting a little bit bigger, you start breaking it into divisions. And so a division is geographic. So it might be from Iniat to Ardenvoire. That would be a division. And that person's in charge of that section of ground. And then beyond that, you go to 5 divisions. That's usually what we do as a span of control is 5. And so if you go to 5 divisions, you need to insert a branch. And so there'd be a branch director. And then you just keep going from there. And so it can expand and expand and expand like James was talking about. And so if we had fires, which we've had in the past, from 100 miles to the south and 100 miles to the north, you can just keep separating those fires out and maintaining your span of control. You might have a north operations section, which is what I'm doing. So I have branch directors that work for me. And then you'd have a south ops, maybe down at Cle Elum with a couple of other fires and other divisions and that kind of thing. So we just slowly just kind of break the incident into manageable areas. So when we start talking about groups, because we have some structure groups that are here, or group supervisors, those are mobile. So they're not tied to one spot. So you might have a group working in that division, but then they're also going to bounce over to Plain and work in those divisions too. So they do group exercises. So structure protection is a really good example of that. We have task forces and strike teams. So within those groups, like the state MOB resources, they showed up as strike teams. And there'll be five engines. So back to that span of control. So 5 engines, and then you have a strike team leader. And so we order those folks in as strike teams. So we say we need 5 strike teams for structure protection from Iniat to Ardenvoire, or from Plain down the Chumstick all the way to Leavenworth. So we do it based on just those standard set of resources. So everybody talks about the same thing all the way across the country, like James was talking about with Incident Command System. And then regardless of the agency, whether that's state, county, any kind of response agency, even up to FEMA, we all talk the same language. So that way everybody knows what's going on. So Then we have task forces, which are mixed resources. So you might have a crew, a dozer, and some engines, and there's a task force leader. So they're able to just move around and operate as a task force. So we're going to talk about PACE a little bit. So it's an acronym that we use to describe our primary, our alternate, our contingency, and our emergency. And you can use PACE for lots of different things. In this case, we use it for fire lines and looking at opportunities for containment. But if you need to have a backup plan, right, for almost everything that you do. So your first initial plan might be to do this, and then you need to have a backup plan. So that would be your alternate. Then you need to have a backup plan beyond that. You know, maybe it's if this car doesn't start, I'm going to have this car. If this car doesn't start, I'm going to have a third car. You know, so primary, alternate, contingency, emergency. The other thing that I'll talk about a little bit is management action points, also called trigger points or evaluation points, but it's a line generally that we draw that's going to denote some sort of action or some sort of conversation. And so when we talk about management action points, especially tonight, and when the sheriff gets up here, we'll talk about the management action points that we've hit to determine the evacuation levels, or a conversation about the evacuation levels. And that's based on the current fire behavior and or the expected fire behavior. And if we think it's going to get to this point overnight, you know, those are just all kind of conversation pieces that we talk about when we get to that management action point. So those are just a couple of things I wanted to kind of run over. So when I'm talking about some of the fires, you guys have maybe a little better understanding of that. So I'm going to talk about both fires, but I know these maps are a little small, so I'm going to try and at least maybe this will help a little bit. If I can make this work or not. Want to help me? Yeah, you could. You can try. This on? Okay. All right, we had this working before. We're not going to watch Hulu. Oh, come on. That wasn't working, so I can lean down. All right, we'll try this. You guys hear me okay if I do this? Okay. So this is kind of a scary map, but I thought it might be a little bit better than doing it up on the paper map. So this is what we call field maps, and everybody out on the ground has access to this. And so whenever they're at a certain point, they can put this a point or a line or depict some sort of symbology in the system, and then as soon as they get back to cell service or Wi-Fi, it automatically loads up. And so it's a common operating picture for everybody on the incident. And so this is the Lower Sugarloaf fire, and that has all those things I was just talking about. It has branches and divisions and branch breaks, and drop points are all the little blue squares to denote where we're going to drop off supplies, where we're going to meet people, all those kind of things. So I'll zoom in a little bit, and I'll start over in Division Mike over on the plain side, and you can see, I think, a little bit. So this is some dozer line that we're going to put in. And for folks that were here in 2018, that's the Cougar fire. We push line down off that ridge, down to these switchbacks, and we're going to use that same line again. And so that kind of gives you a little general reference. This is Miners Ridge, Iniat Ridge up here. And then we're going to use the road from 52 Road down to that dozer line. And we're going to eventually connect into some roads here. And then they've constructed some dozer line all the way down through that state ground and connected it into Second Creek or Dry Creek and Second Creek area. And so that's going to be a little bit of what I'm going to call a compartment as far as kind of breaking up each part of the incident. So eventually we would take fire from currently where it is to this established line, down this road, down to the dozer line, and then eventually back down to this road here. And so we would compartmentalize that and back the fire down to our good defendable boundary, and thus securing the values at risk there in plain. And that, all these little symbols here are structures down there in District 9. So moving down here a little bit further, we come out of Mike and we come down into Division Alpha. And so that's going to be the Second Creek, Dry Creek, Van Creek, and eventually down Mary Canyon over on the Chumstick side. So where that fire's at, up on this is the fire perimeter, pretty close to that. So we would eventually use aerial ignition potentially, or hand ignition, and we'll pull that down to our defensible line there, and get a good black line on this piece here. So that'll be in progress likely in the coming days. So on this section here, we have hand line we went direct on this all the way across through here over to this 200 line. So that's going to be secured. Currently it is secured. They're just finishing that up today in the upper part of Division Alpha. And then once we turn the corner here on the Chumstick Creek, we're going to start going up along the power line corridor. That runs about right here. And then that eventually runs up to French Corral right here. So they grabbed the power line right away and burned along that, and then brought it up to French Corral. They connected a couple of switchbacks here at the top. For folks that have driven that road, it kind of winds up the hill, you know, and so we straightened that out a little bit, and we got up to French Corral here. So from that point, we switch over to Division Whiskey, and that's the power line corridor, kind of runs right through here, up to the telecommunications site that's up on top. And so once the fire originally was about right here on Mosquito Ridge, and we felt fairly confident we were going to be able to get in there on Mosquito Ridge, take that all the way down towards Ardenvoire. And I think it was 2 nights ago, about 12:30 in the morning, those thunderstorms came over, and night shift was out there. About 11 o'clock, the fire was here. Everything was fine. By 1 o'clock, the fire was clear over here, all the way past Roaring Ridge. So that thunderstorm came in. He said it just came out of nowhere, blowing 30, 40 miles an hour, blew the fire right out to the southeast there, and so right past our planned containment line. And so since then, we've been having to, once Mosquito was out, we kept coming down the 52 road, and we're going to eventually keep coming down as far as we can to get out around that. And then over the last couple of days, the fires continue to get down into Roaring Creek itself, and then it's just slowly done some movement over the last couple of days to where it is currently. So continuing down in Division Whiskey, this is where we start going into my pace discussion. So that's essentially our primary line right now, is where I was just talking about, and where we're going to eventually end up going with the primary. And don't get scared, but we're going to follow these red R's, which denotes road, as line. We're going to come all the way down to Dinkelman, and we're going to come back down, and we're going to tie into Mill Canyon. And what that's going to do is that's going to provide a primary line that we know that we can defend. And then at that point, we're going to look to go back in tighter. Okay, but we always want to establish that primary line first, so we know where we're going and we have a good spot to go. And then we'll look at other opportunities to retract that and go back interior. So we call that reverse pace or inverted pace. So we get our primary line in place, and then we go back and we turn this into an alternate, and then we go to a primary. So we're going to try and, once we get this line in, which will be in the next couple of days, we'll then see if we can go in a little bit tighter. So believe me, we don't want to go down that far, but that's our best option right now for having a good defendable boundary all the way around through there. And for folks that have been in this country, you know how cut up it is, and the draws are big and nothing really connects. So that's where we're going to go for now. But then again, we're going to keep coming back around and try and go in a little tighter. So Division Sierra, those folks have been working along the Iniat here, and They've been working here off the end of Dinkelman. They've been putting in dozer lines here on Moe Ridge. Bachelor Dozer was working last night or night before last. They were working some lines down in here with all the locals, and so there's a lot of opportunities in here to go a little bit tighter. But again, we're trying to find the best ridge to come down to protect these values at risk, and so that's what Sierra's working on. And then up in Oscar, it's going to be Gold Ridge. This was our primary. This has been used several times, the Tyee Creek Road or Tyee Road. And so that's established and in. The prep work's been done on that. And then again, we're going to invert that pace, and we're going to come over here so this becomes our primary. So we're going to be working down Gold Ridge from the 52 road up by the lookout. And we're going to come down the ridge all the way down. And this is where Tillicum comes in, and Indian and Klutchman come in, and they all turn into Tillicum. And then we're going to come right down here at the top of Mad River. Is what our plan is over the next probably 4 or 5 days, is what that's gonna look like. And then from there, just kind of giving you a little bit of insight of what we're looking at. At that point, we would try and come in a little bit tighter again, and we were successful in holding it above this road, so that's still a good opportunity. We were successful with holding it with some aircraft in here, kind of slowing it down. But we're going to see if we can come back up Mosquito again, and get in on these roads and get around this piece, and then eventually come down and figure out what we can do with the Roaring River or Roaring Creek section. Okay. So the management action points that I talked about, those are on the map there. When we recommended to the sheriff that we were going to do level 3 evacuations in here, that's when we hit this map 4. And so the night after this happened, and it pushed down and it hit our management action points, and it was expected to continue to blow, and it did a couple of miles in that day, and it's a couple more miles to Mad River, and those structures right there at the mouth of the canyon. So we made the recommendation that it's likely going to get there, or it could get there by the next day. So that's when we recommended to move those levels up. So that was a conscious line that we put there on the ground, so we can have those conversations again with the sheriffs and give ourselves and the sheriff's department enough time to get people out, recommended time. And so they said they needed at least, a few hours to get the word out, and probably 12 hours to get people out. So based on that, we recommended to go up to that next level. So that's kind of the down and dirty on Sugarloaf, and probably a little bit more information than maybe you were looking for, but just kind of wanted to pass on what we're looking at, kind of what the fire's been doing, and kind of what the response has been to the fire behavior. The state MOB resources usually come in when the local fire chiefs get together and they say this is going to exceed our control, and so you put in a request to the state, and then the state MOB resources generally show up. So I think there's 6 or 7 different state MOB strike teams that are here, and they're scattered out between the Iniat drainage, the Chumstick, up at Plain, doing structure protection, structure assessments. Every year there's new houses that are built and new driveways and everything. So even though we were here in 2018, there's a whole new set of structures. So got to go back and update those structure assessments and update the structure protection plans, figure out where everything's at. And those folks are putting in hose lays, folded tanks, getting everything ready to go in case the fire does come down and they have to protect those structures. So those folks are scattered all over, as well as your local fire district folks. They've been, like James said, those guys have been great to work with, very communicating well. And so they're scattered up and down their respective districts and been very helpful. So it's been a really easy transition with the state resources as well as the local resources for that. So before I get the curtain hook, I think I'll move on to the next fire, and then I'm sure there'll be other conversations. I do want to show you one little thing as far as do a quick little flyover so you can kind of see the topography a little bit. So this is where we started up in Division Mike, and this is going to be where that line is going to come down. And then as you come back down around towards this is the top end of Beaver Creek drainage, and then you come up over the top where we put that dozer line, you start coming down into some private land here. So this is the top of Dry Creek, getting down into Second Creek, Van Creek. This is what we were calling the Section 36 structures, which are up in here. This is where they were just now burning today. Here's the power line corridor. As you move along, up towards French Saddle or French Corral. And you're kind of looking down the top of Mosquito Ridge, working along the top there, and then down into Roaring Creek right here. Don't want to make you sick here. And then as you come back down around, you can see where the fire's edge is along here. This is Gold Ridge, Indian, Tillicum, Kluchman, and then eventually down here to Mad River. You can see where that leads right down to Mad River and Ardenbois. And then up here on top, top's the lookout. So a lot of cut up ground and lots of opportunities up there to find a good way to get around this incident. Just give me a second. I'll move over to I think. I can't quite make that one work for some reason, so I'll go over here to the map real quick. So Labor Mountain, down on the Cle Elum district, and a little tiny bit in Chelan County in the Wenatchee River district. So we're looking at the Teanaway, I think it's North Fork of Teanaway River here. This is Stafford Creek and Bear Creek, NTN Creek, and Big Ingalls Creek up here. And then Old Blewett Pass is right down in here. So just kind of give you a general idea where that's at. Resources have been working in this Teanaway drainage, working on the structure protection. In this area, there's several rec residences and lots of public infrastructure there. They grabbed this line here. This is Stand-Up Creek, and so they were working in here over the last couple of days. They burned this trail and this line down to this main road, and then they've burned along here to about this point along this bottom piece. So they have a pretty good little catcher's mitt here in the bottom. Eventually, they're going to be looking at coming up past the end of the road, taking this little trail system up and going all the way up to Miller Peak. And then, the fire is still progressing to the east here, kind of getting into Miller drainage. And so we need to have an easterly boundary on this. Fire was a little bit active up here in the top as it's moving up towards the wilderness boundary and up in some of these drainages. And they've been kind of holding up some of this with some aviation, and as well as here until they can kind of get out in front of this because they don't want to get outflanked. So back to some of that pace discussion, this would be our primary. We're still actively really searching for an alternate out here. There's a few roads that don't quite line up in really good fashion. So we're going to be looking at some other opportunities here. This is going to be our primary for now, even though the fire might continue to kind of move this way. It's going away from values at risk and up towards the wilderness. And then this will be our alternate as we were talking about. So there's some more mixed private land in here, Forest Service and private land, and some other private timberlands over here. So those folks are based out of Cle Elum down at their fixed operating base. And, as James was talking about, there's a group of people down there, and then we have a group of people here in Iniat, and then the other FOB for this other side is going to be working out of Plain. So we have both sides of the incidents covered pretty well, and mostly it's based on access, because it's pretty hard to get across there. But so that's kind of a rundown of the incidents, and I'll definitely be around. I'm sure there'll be some other questions. So hopefully that was helpful for you guys.
Thanks, Nathan. Next up is Sheriff Morrison and Lieutenant Moody to talk about evacuation levels on both sides of the fire.
Thank you, Stan. I'll try to keep it short since I know you've taken in a lot of information, but I appreciate all of you being here. It's nice to see our community coming alongside of us. You are one of our best advocates and partners when we're looking at 80,000 plus citizens in Chelan County. Helping us police 2,900 square miles. Specifically, it's challenging when you have fires like this breaking out. I think at one time we were up to 7 fires total throughout the county, so it's good to see Chief Goodrich and his team on the ground, and actually it is nice to see some familiar faces from our Pioneer Fire here last year. Specifically with Stan, just the open lines of communication as we tried to maintain those open channels with the Stehekin community and just come to overcome some of the frustrations and lack of communication that had historically been in place with fires that we had faced in the past. I feel pretty confident with Chief Moody here overseeing our emergency management division along with Sergeant Reinfeld and Rich Magnuson, that we have distinguished ourselves as one of the leaders within Washington State for our emergency management division. I know that the governor's office under Governor Inslee and currently under Governor Ferguson have looked to us along with WASPIC just for model policies, procedures for evacuations. I feel like we're in good hands, and Chief Moody is continuing to lead that. So please know that we do not take it lightly when we put these roadblocks in place, especially the evacuation levels. I was glad to hear in our briefing today that we're going to be moving those back from 3 to 2. We understand it's an inconvenience to you. We don't put them in place lightly, and we do try to keep in consideration that we do not want to disturb your lives, but we also have the unfortunate responsibility of being the individuals that have to protect property, people, and we try to do that as best as possible while still handling our day-to-day calls. We still have deputies out patrolling 24/7. Even as we are speaking, coming in, we have a search and rescue operation up at Dragontail Peak above Kolchak. Shouldn't be surprising. We talk about it quite a bit. But our resources are continuing to do what we're expected to do on a state level while prioritizing this. We have been in touch with some of the media that reached out to me today, talking about the potential of looting in some of those properties. We still have deputies that are up manning the roadblocks. We have deputies that live up the Iniat. We have citizens that are clearly vigilant and watching out for their neighbors as well. We're not aware of any incident where any property has been stolen. If that is something that is happening, please, if you see something, say something. We are on 24/7. We'll respond quickly. We do take those kind of concerns seriously, and we want to make sure that your property is protected as our fire allies are also out doing their job protecting their property. But we're very much committed to this. We understand the convenience that we're trying to maintain for you while also protecting your property. And we're asking you, please, continue to communicate with us. That's what we're expecting from our partners here. I also want to thank the City of Iniat and also our Board of County Commissioner. We have Commissioner Hawkins back there that have been good allies for us as we've been communicating with Commissioner Smith, Commissioner Overbay, talking about issuing a federal emergency declaration within the county, so we're communicating in that. So we'll continue to see what we need to do, also pushing out to an earlier date where our other fires that we've been addressing, because we do not want to put that burden back on the taxpayers here within Chelan County. I think we already ask enough for your tax dollars, so we'd like our federal partners to come in and assist us on that front. So we are being cognizant of being responsible with the limited resources we do have. And again, if we're missing something, please be the allies that you've always been for us. Communicate that with us. We're not perfect. At times we miss the mark. But we're doing everything possible that we can, and I believe we have the right team in place. We also appreciate the U.S. Forest Service. Has been a great advocate and ally for us all summer as we've been communicating, addressing problems on our shared land. You're looking at 87% of Chelan County that's not accessible by road, much of that federally owned, and if we didn't have our federal partners on the ground assisting us, Chelan County itself would be overwhelmed with the amount of responsibilities that we take on, with just the unique terrain that we saw in the topography map that we had on there. So again, glad to see our fire crew on the ground, and especially an experienced crew that we've seen in action before that really, I think, stepped up communication issues that we'd had with other teams that were assigned to the Pioneer Fire over that 3-month period. So again, I think we have the right team on the ground. And if you have any questions, we'll be here available. I will allow Chief Moody, he is my Chief of Operations, who oversees, among other things, our Emergency Management Division, just kind of give a summary of what he's received from his daily briefings. Most specifically, I think our last one was this morning, correct? And he'll give you the rest of the information. But I appreciate you being here, and please know that you can call on us 24/7. And from what I've seen from our reports from our contract cities and our citizens in Chelan, we have a pretty quick response time. Geography given. So here you go, Chief. Thank you.
Thanks. As the sheriff said, if you are in a level 3 right now, we're going to move it back to a level 2. So that'd be all of Ardenvor and a little bit up Iniat River Road and a little bit down. We're doing that. We want to remind people that the fire, obviously, as he said, is not out. So because you're going back to a level 2, if you're in that area, we want to remind you that there is a chance you could go back to level 3, and we ask you to respect that. If we don't take it lightly, so if we say level 3, it's because it's a level 3, and you're in probably roughly 12 hours or less from the fire getting to your place. But we understand it's a big inconvenience for you to be out of your house, so that's why we're moving it back to level 2. So be here afterwards. If you have any specific questions, be glad to talk to you about it.
Thanks, Ryan. Let's see, Whitney, he's the wildlife program manager for the Chelan PUD. Speak a little bit about power lines.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Whitney Machado. I'm the Wildfire Program Manager for Chelan County PUD. We've been involved with Forest Service on both districts from the start of this fire, and then when Northwest Team 3 came in, we've been working closely with them, attending daily cooperator meetings and really, sharing maps of where our critical infrastructure is. And I just wanted to clear up that there's no planned power outage as a result of this fire. We would only proactively shut off power to support firefighters on the ground for their safety if any of our infrastructure was to be impacted. So with that, there was a power outage on the Plain Lake Wenatchee side that was not related to the fire. That was a different issue from power coming over from Stevens Pass. So once again, we're here to support the incident management team. We'll have resources in the field if our infrastructure is going to be impacted, and we'll only be shutting off power at their request for their safety on the ground. And I'll be available after the meeting for any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Whitney. And then finally, to close this out for the formal presentation part, Mayor Renee Swearigan. Did I say it right? Try to.
Hi, everybody. It's really good to see such a great turnout. I will keep this very short and sweet. Our interaction so far with the team that's come in has been spectacular. It's a high level of communication. The cooperators meetings are completely full of every single person that James mentioned. There's across the board just a ton of people working on this fire. And we were able to welcome yesterday the fire team back to Aniat. Since we did a POMIS run-through, it was a kind of a dress rehearsal. I think everything went really smooth. We were able to get the resources in place and help support them in every way that we possibly can. One thing I want to mention is at these cooperator meetings, people keep saying that we are fire-wise. And I think that means, first of all, we have a very long history with fire, but also that we really do respect the efforts that have gone into all the hard work that these people are pouring into our community. So the city of Aniat is ready to help any way we possibly can. If the evacuation levels change and you need a place to go, please call City Hall. If you can't find the resources that you need on the myriad of places that there's information, call City Hall. We'll help you out. So thank you very much. That's it.
Thanks, Renee. All right, well, we're done with our formal presentation. We'll open it up for questions. I know we have a few online already, but we'll take some in here first to start off with. Do you have a question, sir? So the question was about the level 3 changing to 2, and then will the level 2 change to a 1 on the east side of the river?
No, if you're a level 2 now, we're going to keep those still at level 2 because we need you obviously to be, the definition is, be ready to go at a moment's notice. So we're going to keep you there.
Thanks, Ryan. I saw a hand up over here. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, so the question is, for residents who live up valley, If the road is closed for any reason, is there an escape route, perhaps Shady Pass or another route?
Yeah, that'll be an option, obviously, that we would use if we had to. Just know, though, part of our planning and going into this, and like Nathan mentioned, the action points. That's part of the things that we consider when we bring different levels, and we will consider that if it gets to a point where we feel that Eniat's going to be, the river road's going to be blocked, then we'll try and plan as far out as we can to give you guys notice to get out if you can. So. If it's an emergent situation that we need to open it up, we'll make that happen.
James, did you have something to add?
So yeah, just to add to that, so, visualizing where that fire is coming down, it's going to come down and hit a certain point. And so there was a lot of conversation, ma'am, on exactly that topic of the river road and how far the Eniat River Road extends up where people actually reside. And so we were in constant commo about that, and if something changes, we would most certainly be relaying to Chief Moody here on the need to pull folks down. The same reason we didn't recommend, that other side of the road to go to level 3, because the road is actually on the north side of the river, and the way those slopes and things are designed, we'll know as it's coming down, and then the sheriff office will be notified in terms of letting other people know. But we didn't want to move as many people out if we didn't have to.
Thanks. Just a reminder, if you're watching virtually, please put your questions in the comment on Facebook. So, James, I have a couple questions for you from online. The first one is, what does the term values refer to? Are they homes in the line of the fire or something else?
So yeah, values is obviously a broad term, but yeah, communities, infrastructure, homes, that's first and foremost in terms of life, property. That's the top of the scale in terms of when we come in, what we're here to protect, no different than the sheriff's office, no different than the fire districts, et cetera. So that was our marching mission. So yeah, life, property, infrastructure, basically in that order. And then it goes into that ecological, natural resource. Those things are a tier lower than the rest of it. So we're here. We all work for a lot of federal agencies that make up the incident management teams, but it's also a lot of local cooperators, fire departments, law enforcement that make these teams up. But it's kind of the standard same theme of protecting people, property, and then thereafter. So a lot of the homes and things are down in the valley or along the Columbia or in those communities, and so that's obviously a core focus point. And if we can steer those fires out and away from those folks, we will, to be able to put them out. But that's the marching missions or the broad example of values.
So next question is, what does containment mean, and how do you calculate it, and what do the percentages mean?
Ooh, that's a good question. That's what everybody wants to know. I won't lie, right? There's a lot of work being done on all these, and they're still at 0% containment. And not for a spoiler alert, I'll tell you, when I, as the incident commander, say that fire is probably 50%, that pretty much fires out and it's not going anywhere. So if that's a scale of reference, so right now it's 0. But as we start to put black line, i.e., the perimeter starts to get black, and you see that, and we start to do the percentage of, miles of perimeter with black line on there, meaning we know the work that we put into that with a fire line, what we call mop up, where we extinguish every little hot spot in that particular area. We give it some time to marinate and ensure that no smokes pop back up, that we didn't miss anything, because we are humans. That's when we end up putting line on the map that's black. And so you heard from Mr. Goodrich, Ops Chief, that there's a line working in off of this piece. So right now there's actually containment line through this whole zone, but we haven't mopped it up. We haven't, put hands in it. There's still heat there, and so that's why there's no line on it. And then you heard from Mr. Goodrich as well, as we've got some indirect line. So in theory, we're getting line all the way around this, but then we have to fire it off, and that's going to take time to bring the fire to the control line, get it mopped up, and that's why you see containment rise so slowly on these larger incidents. So no, not to be concerned with the zero. I know you're all going to focus on that. People across the country focus on that, but we will bump that number up as soon as we can. And if something changes, we'll be working with the local officials to warn folks. Public information is going out daily, so stay tuned to the social media and the trap lines and those sort of things, get your intel. And there's always an information phone number line that you can call and ask specific questions. So thanks for that.
Any questions out here before I have a couple more questions? Yes, way back there, sir. Ma'am. Thank you. We're happy to be here. So Nathan, I've got a couple specific questions for you. First one is, have you put a line in to protect homes north of Plain in Chihuahua River Pines?
So I don't know if exactly where that would be, but like I said, there's going to be a line here soon coming down off of the ridge. And again, I think that's this area right here, I believe. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. So I think was the question north of that, or to protect it moving north? North of Plain. Okay, yes. So these lines here coming off the top of Eniat Mountains from 52 down this road to the 6105, and then this dozer line here is essentially going to be that north flank, that north containment line, that north feature that's going to protect the developments here north of Plain. In this area, there's a couple of other spots. So if this is going to be our primary, we are looking at other places coming through here for an alternate. And I'll tell you, there's not much. There's not really anything that just really jumps out as far as a real good defendable boundary. And so it will likely be this 22 road will be the alternate. And we would end up protecting these structures to the west or to the east of that road. And then that would end up protecting the bulk of these values here. So this will be our primary line. And then this 22 road here, right around this area would be that other containment feature.
Next question is in Whiskey Division around Williams, Olalla, Hay, Nahum. What is the strategy?
So the strategy for that area down here, and I talked to Chief Brett with Wenatchee Valley Fire Department this morning, and we've been in conversations as well as with Department number 1, I believe it is, there out of Kashmir. And so that's going to be all this country down in here. And so this Dinkelman is going to be, again, our primary. And so that's going to be what would protect all that ground that was in the question there. And then there's other lines down below here in those canyons, Nahum and Birch Mountain kind of area that those are lines that are already proposed both by the local ranger district and the fire district that are in place or could be in place quickly to protect those values down here. So we know, like James was talking about, the fire likes to go towards a river. You know, you get the sundowners and the hot air keeps rising over the valley and it sucks that air down. And so you guys have all witnessed that in the past where those fires will come down the Swakane or they'll come down the Nahum Canyon. And so that would be our primary line, and then we'll have some alternate lines and or some rapidly built lines, probably with mechanized equipment in that area to help protect that stuff. And so we'll be well out in front of that before any of that would happen. Hopefully that answered that one. So I'll put one more comment as far as I think the second part of that question from online as far as how the containment's calculated. So if this is 50 miles around, and it's probably not far off from that, and we get a couple of miles down here, so divide 2 miles into 50. It's not much. So we might make some pretty good headway for a few miles down here, but all this perimeter is calculated in that containment percentage. And so it takes a long time to get to that point to where you're going to be up in the 50, 60, 70%. So we're working hard, though.
Thanks. Any questions out here? I think we have a couple more from online, but yes, sir. Yeah, so the question is about the Dinkelman Ridge being our primary line, and what our options are we looking at so it doesn't reach that, should we have opportunities to do so?
So yes, like I talked about, you know, the primary line, you're going to find your best, most defensible spot to go with your resources. That's going to be your primary line. Sometimes that's direct, right up against the fire line, and then you have something else that's a little farther out that's going to be your alternate. Right now, our best option is Dinkelman all the way around. So that's going to get put in. It's already in as a road, but it's going to be prepped. It's going to be ready to go. If this fire is moving and chunking along, we're going to keep up with that, and we're going to burn Dinkelman all the way through. And that might be what we end up doing. But if that's not the case, and this fire just continues to just kind of slowly burn or just kind of sit there, we're going to look at other opportunities to get in closer. So that is our primary, and that's where we want to establish that initially so we know where we need to go. But then again, we'll try and close in tighter as weather permits, as fire behavior permits, all those kind of other factors.
So on this, right, the map is fairly static. That fire moved about 4 miles in a shift. And so it takes a long time to put those control lines in, even if they've been opened before, and then they've been closed back up, or vegetation happens, right? Photosynthesis happens. So we want to get as far out in front of that to create that time and space to actually put the line in. When we first got here, we were looking at Mosquito Ridge, and it was like, oh, it's holding. I think we can get it. And then it blew out. And then it was like, well, we think we can do Roaring. And the reality is we can get sucked into that too close, not enough time to build the line. And then next thing you know, we're in the Columbia, and we've been behind the curve the whole time. And so that's what Nathan's really talking about, is we need to build enough time and space to get something in, worst case. That way it's ready to go. And then we'll work back knowing that we've got that time and we've got that backup plan. And so a lot of times people are like, put it out as small as possible. Well, that ground, that terrain, it's pretty hard to stick a person in it, because if something happens and they break a leg or something bad happens, we have a hard time getting them out. And that's why we're on the ridges, the road systems, those sort of things. And so it is all about time and space. And then once we have those opportunities, we'll look closer.
Thanks, Nathan. We have a few questions from online. So the first one will be for Nathan, the second one for Sheriff, I guess, if Ryan's not here, and the third one for Tara. So first one is, how do we know if a home or asset is on the firefighter structure map?
So there's lots of different ways that we get the information. A lot of those structure maps are created from county tax lots initially. So, of course, the county knows where your structure's at, so they're going to tax you, right? So they know where it's at. And then both the fire districts, they map out their own districts, and so they know all the driveways, all the roads, and they put those on the map. And then when the structure protection groups come in, they take that to another level. And so we have a process called Survey 123, and everybody kind of prescribes to that, and all that goes into those databases. And they're all built into those little colored symbols I showed you on the map. Those are from just a myriad of different sources over time. And so there's probably a couple that aren't on there, but I would say probably 99% of the structures are on that layer. So we have a very good idea of where those structures are at. There was a few that were kind of scattered, and it's like, oh, there's something up here, and there's, you guys probably know where they are, but there's a couple of yurts stuck out there in the middle of the timber, you know, and they weren't on the map. They weren't on our structure layer. And so we were flying along. I'm like, damn, there's a yurt, so we put them on the map, and so there's a few of those kind of things, but for the most part, almost everything that is a value, there might be a few outbuildings and that kind of stuff, or illegal structures that aren't, in some of the databases, but it kind of comes from a lot of different places.
Thanks, Nathan. Sheriff, the question is about evacuations. With no cell phone or internet service, how will we be notified if evacuation levels changes?
So we've been here before, as we've already advised our county is rural, so if we can't get you on cell or landline, then we're going to go door to door. We'd also say that we do try to communicate our information with local radio stations. As I was doing my last interview with KPQ, they had just been putting out announcements earlier that day about evacuations, so continue to listen to your radios, and we'll have units on the ground as well doing evacuations as we've done in the past. But we've certainly tried to enhance our notification system through Everbridge, but we do recognize that there are spots that we just can't reach, and we'll adapt and overcome.
Thanks, Sheriff. Tara, the question is regarding closure area and hunting season and that conflict.
Yes. Always a hot topic to talk about this time of year. I think many of you know that closure orders are legal orders that we can use to restrict access to roads, trails, different pieces of land. Typically, we put these closures in place due to a threat, right? In this case, it's wildfire, but there are other reasons. And so we currently have we have a multitude of closure orders on the forest right now. We will probably see a new closure order for the Labor Mountain Fire and the Lower Sugarloaf Fire come into effect tomorrow with a broader footprint. What I would share with you is very aware of hunting season, as well as other recreation interests. And so it is not lightly that we endeavor into making the choice to restrict access to our public lands. And we are continually reassessing the decision to do so and the appropriate scope and scale of those orders with our fire professionals, with our other resource professionals, to be able to shrink those, much like these folks talked about the PACE model, continually having that deliberative decision process about how we can shrink those and provide that access back to you in a timely manner when the threats are mitigated. So,
Thanks, Tara. Any other questions here? Local? Yes, ma'am. Okay, there's a question about air support, some confusion around that. And Nathan, can you tackle that one? The question's about air support and what does that mean? There's some confusion around that.
Okay. Sorry about that. We were talking about turning the BPA line back on, so there was some discussions on that. So the question's about air support? What does air support mean? So I talked about those groups, right? Divisions and groups. So we have an air group supervisor, so an air operations branch director. And so just like the branches on the ground, we have an aviation branch. And so that individual runs all the aviation stuff. The helibases, contact with the air attacks. And so an air attack is a person that's in a fixed wing that just flies around in circles, left-hand circles. They got a crooked neck because they're looking down. So 3 or 4 hours at a time. And so they're keeping track of everything that's going on in the air, just like a branch director is keeping track of all the divisions and everything on the ground. And then they'll have a lead plane that comes in. So a lead plane will come in front of a tanker. And so the lead plane will come in and fly a line where we want the retardant. And that lead plane will, they push a little button and it puts oil in their intake manifold. And it squirts out a little bit of smoke. And so the plane behind them, the tanker, can see where that smoke is. He's like, that's where I want to drop. And so the tanker will come in and they'll do their drop. And so, or there's helicopters, small, medium, and big, the big sky cranes, we all like to see those. And so that's all part of air support. So you got your rotor wings that are dropping buckets, or they got a fixed tank on them and they're dropping just like a tanker does. You have your little scoopers. DNR has a lot of scoopers. They fly off the river. So the little mosquito fleet, we call them. So the little float planes that drop water, and then you have your single engine air tankers that are like a crop duster. They drop retardant. And you got your large air tankers and your very large air tankers. So all that is air support, essentially. So when the firefighters are looking for some aviation support, whether that's fixed wing with retardant, fixed wing with water, rotor wing with retardant, rotor wing with water, then they're going to call for Air Operations Branch Director, who's going to call the helibase and launch the helicopter, or they're going to call the airport and launch the fixed wing. And air attack will get up, and then they'll bring in the very large air tankers or the air tankers or whatever it is that is appropriate for the fuel type and the fire behavior and what we're trying to meet as far as an objective. So air support's a pretty broad term, but it's everything that comes from the air to help support the firefighter and put the fire out. The use rate, like the daily rate, James might remember some of that stuff a little bit better. Can I say a lot? You know, it's, I think they're like $100,000 for a drop for some of those VLATs. It's quite a bit of money. So we don't use it lightly, you know, and it needs to be used appropriately. And, you know, people are always asking, why just bring in the VLAT? It's going to put the fire out. Well, it's not like that. It doesn't work that way, you know. Well, values for one, other priorities for two, and just dropping retardant out in the middle of the timber without supporting it with ground resources or having it put in the right spot is not a good efficient use of tax dollars for one, but it's not the right tool. You know, if you're out in the Badlands and the coulees to the east, it might be the right tool. You can put a lot of fire out with a VLAT. You really can in the grass, you know, but not so much in the timber sometimes. So it just kind of depends on the situation and the right tool. Access egress is hard for those planes, if you can imagine. You know, they got to slow down to a certain amount of speed that's really about the minimal amount of speed, forward airspeed, that will keep them in the air in order to make a good drop, because a jet flies pretty fast, right? So they got to slow down and maneuver, and they lose their maneuverability when they're going slower, and they got to have good access out or egress out of the drop. And so you can't fly into a canyon and make a drop and expect to get out of there. They got to fly with the canyon going away from them. So we talk about, you know, why don't you just put retardant in Roaring Creek and stop the fire? Well, the fixed wing can't really do that. They can't just drop in and drop their load and put the fire out. It just doesn't work that way. They can't fly in that kind of country. So if we're up on the ridges and it makes sense, then we will support the firefighters or support that ridge with retardant, and we'll call for them, and we'll likely get them because we're the number one priority. So we'll use them when it's appropriate and when we think it's going to make the most sense and the most benefit for the ground. So, but really the name of the game is the heavy helicopters. That's probably our best bang for the buck. You know, and they can get in there tight. They can hover right over what we want them to put water on. They carry a lot of water, and they can be real specific. They can fly in less visibility, so they can get under the smoke and fly better. So when it was smoky and the fire's moving, we'd love to be able to get the planes in there, but you just can't because they can't see. So rotor wing's a lot better for doing a lot of that stuff. So, but they're expensive.
Thanks, Anna. Yes, sir. Is there a place online where they can see the action plan or the map that?
That one specifically, but others. You know, you can get on the FTP site. I'm pretty sure that's open. Yeah, you can get on the FTP, and I can. No, it won't show that much detail, but you can see the divisions and some of the other values and drop points and that kind of thing. But it won't show all that same information. But FTP is a good spot. You know, and watch duty, of course. Everybody's got watch duty, but be careful with watch duty. So they're not always right.
Don't go anywhere. Is the fire in the Second Creek drainage or Second Creek Loop Road?
Probably yes. Close. You know, I think it's in the upper part of Second Creek. I don't know exactly where Second Creek Loop Road is, but where the junction of Dry Creek and Second Creek and Chumstick, that's right up above that is where the fire is backing down. So it's fairly close to that area, but if you wanted to reach out, whoever that's online, if you wanted to reach out, we could talk if you had some specific questions on where, if something's impacted or not. Right above Eagle Creek? Probably not then. It's pretty far up on the ridge still. Yes, yeah. It's quite a ways above that. So it hasn't backed down to some of that private land if folks know where that's at. So.
Yes, ma'am. So the question is about whether or not watch duty is accurate. Should we be using it, or are there other avenues? And there are other avenues.
Probably get beat up when I go outside. The watch duty guys will be waiting for me. But it's getting better. But they get their information from all of our sources, but they get it out really quick. And so they kind of jump the gun sometimes, I guess, is what I'm saying. So if you watch it, you'll see sometimes it'll pop up, and then all of a sudden it'll be different the next time you look at it. So just be don't believe everything you see on the internet, so, but it's a pretty good source. And there's other places, NCWeb, and there's all sorts of other places that Stan can tell you about. So.
Yeah. For this fire, refer to the Facebook page that's dedicated to this fire and the Labor Mountain fire, to NCWeb. If you have a question, give us a call. We're there to answer those kinds of questions. What else am I missing for a... Oh, yeah, Chelan County Sheriff's Office for any evacuation notifications. They're right on top of it. Emergency management page, yeah. So, and I think you could... Do you guys have Everbridge or some other phone tree? So, and sign up for Everbridge as well. James, do you have... Okay. All right, any other questions from in here? All right, I think we'll end it. Thank you for coming here and taking time out of your evening to be here. And again, I also wanted to thank the Aniat School District for making this place available to us. So next time you see the superintendent, thank him. So appreciate your time, and follow us on the various platforms, and we'll keep you up to date as best possible.